This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
I'm Megan.
The producer of the upcoming movie M3GAN might be a doll fanatic, having created various horror movies with focus on a variety of dolls, famously creating the forever creepy Annabelle doll, which is arguably one of the most disturbing creations in cinema history. This time though, James Wan decided to go with a rather modern interpretation of a creepy doll. Instead of being possessed by something paranormal or being puppeteered by a killer with a questionable sense of morality, M3GAN is an android controlled with robotics and programmed to be a protector and best friend for a child by any means necessary. Sadly, it's too late for Halloween, but that won't stop us from taking a closer look at the creation of this creepy android. And talking to one of the puppeteers responsible for bringing M3GAN to life, Paul Lewis.
It's insane, right?
You know what else is a bit insane and a bit scarier than a doll chasing after you in the middle of the woods? It's how insanely easy our sponsor Squarespace makes it to build a professional-looking website with zero knowledge of how to code. And just like the AI dolls follow their prime directive at all costs, Squarespace's website builder's primary objective is to help you easily build a website you're going to absolutely love. With easy-to-design templates that are customizable to your specific needs, Squarespace is a great option for those needing a professional site to attract clients. Just a warning though, don't forget to compliment Squarespace's website builder on doing a great job. It gets a bit sensitive.
Do you like your website, Dave? Tell me you love me, Dave.
Besides dealing with this sentient website builder, this is a great platform for creatives or freelancers looking to show off their work. They've got a ton of great templates to choose from and customize to your liking, giving you a great place to show off your work to prospective clients. You can head right now to squarespace.com/framevoyager below in the description to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code FrameVoyager. Now, back to some creepy dolls. Many might be surprised how much puppetry went into the making of M3GAN, but for Paul Lewis, puppetry has been a lifelong fascination from early in his childhood when Sesame Street and the Muppets first aired.
So when I saw Uncle Deadly, I was so entranced by that design, and I was already starting to teach myself drawing and become a cartoonist, because becoming a cartoonist was something that I was really keen on. And I saw that design, and I was like, oh, I want to build that. I want to make something like it. So one of my aunts used to make clothes and was very proficient with needle and thread, and she taught me how to hand sew. I just kind of had to figure it all out, because there's, back then, no YouTube, no way of really finding out in detail how the Muppets were made at all here in New Zealand. So I just basically found books with patterns for soft toys and then converted them into puppets. So I did that for a while and taught myself to puppeteer. And then as a teenager, discovered I could sing. And put it all aside and trained classically as a singer and went into opera and musical theatre for a while, and that was my bread and butter. So puppetry was left when I was like 16 or so, and by then I was really mad into wanting to be a creature designer and doing makeup effects, special effects makeup. And so I had begun sculpting and molding and creating things, and I've got one puppet that I built from when I was 15 that still exists, made out of latex rubber. It's slowly falling apart. And so it wasn't until my 40s that I got back into puppetry. I kind of have gone a very circuitous route to getting to Sweet Tooth and M3GAN, because I was 46 when I auditioned for this place called Woe Studios in Henderson, which was looking for a company of puppeteers and actors to do live shows. And so I got cast in that and have been working full-time as a puppeteer and a puppet maker ever since.
Well, having worked extensively with puppets over the course of his career, M3GAN was a bit of a fun challenge, if not a bit unsettling. M3GAN's appearance is uncanny, having unnatural silicone skin, big, lifeless eyes, and she even is dressed up like a porcelain doll, designed by Adrian Moreau. The design of this character is so creepy and on point that it even would scare cast members as they walked by it on set. But even though the design was perfect for this character, it had to be brought to life by Paul Lewis and others on the team.
My job was to move her head and move her body, and we had an assistant to the puppetry team. It's a small team, the puppetry team. We had an assistant, our PA, Craig Eason. We sometimes roped him in to help me just to say, keep an arm still or whatever, because whenever she raised an arm, it was supposed to stay still, but that could sometimes be quite difficult to do, to maintain a heavy puppet for a long time without suddenly shaking. So it's like, we can't have M3GAN shaking, so let's have some assistance there. It was actually, because the budget, as you know, was quite low, $12 million, they they didn't really paint me out.
And this is not the first movie we've seen lately with a lower budget that looks like it's a high production movie, with Everything Everywhere All at Once using a lower end budget as well of $25 million and just winning Michelle Yeoh a Golden Globe, something that seems destined to happen with this movie as well. But even though this was a lower budget production, it also has grossed $56.4 million worldwide. In the end, maybe they'll make more than Avatar will. All jokes aside, with a lower budget, it meant that less money could be allocated to special effects to paint out the puppeteers.
I actually was hidden most of the time. So in every shot where there is the M3GAN puppet, I'm actually either below frame or directly behind her. You can't see me, but I'm actually there with the puppet. There is no full CGI version of M3GAN in the movie. There's definitely a digitally replaced face for all of Amy's stuff. So anytime you see M3GAN moving quickly or in big, broad movements, that is Amy. And any other time, particularly in dialogue scenes, that is the puppet. And the puppet, like I said, was very, very expressive. So she could go from, there's one scene where she's looking very, very thoughtful, and that is the puppet. There's no VFX added to that at all. The expressions were so beautifully subtle, and Adrian Moreau and his wife, Kathy Z, they handled the facial expressions together and split that up via animatronics by radio control. We had to learn to work together, sometimes fairly quickly if things changed, to create a performance. But VFX, and this is something that has come up with Sweet Tooth many times, because Bobby, the character that I have been the lead on, VFX have often commented that it's so much better to have a puppet to work with in terms of creating a character than starting from nothing, where you've got a tennis ball on a stick, and just logistics for them to place a character, start building a character into a scene, is made so much easier when they have either a reference or a puppet that then they tweak a little bit to enhance the performance. So it's not as easy as, we'll just give it to VFX and they'll create a version. It's kind of last resort. If there's no other way really to do it effectively physically, then it becomes a VFX puppet. Jared, as well as Jim Mickle, the showrunner for Sweet Tooth, they are fans of puppets. They love the idea that there is a physical character that the actors are interacting with, and knowing that the audience will see it and go, that person was actually there in the shot with the actor. And so when watching the film, knowing that we never had a CGI version of M3GAN in any scene, because Amy, who was 11 when we shot that movie, did all of her own stunts. So all of the stuff you see is Amy. The climax of the film, which I won't give away, but that is all Amy. And the puppet is in there in the mix as well. So it's very clever, a bit of sleight of hand. But yeah, so there were no CGI cheats in terms of digital doubles.
With all the dialogue being performed through the puppet, they had to get the right feel down to keep it creepy and realistic looking, and they quickly learned that early on.
One of the things that they found in the early tests when they were doing R&D was that too much movement did not work. The more still she was, the more still her face was, the stronger she was on screen, and the more effective, and the more unsettling. So actually it was a lot about less is more, and with me, it was all about, I've seen some stuff that was shot behind the scenes of me puppeteering, and from a wee bit of a distance, you can't see what I'm doing at all. But as soon as you see the footage on camera, it's these tiny, tiny little movements of the head. And we found that it was too easy to go too big. So it was just all about just keeping it super. Probably the biggest movement would be the cock to the side of the head. We did, that one was so effective that we did that a lot, where she's just like, excuse me? But often it would be just like a slight tilt down or a slight tilt up, and just keeping her alive while talking, but because that was all automated to pre-recorded dialogue. The more subtle, the better.
But beyond this, Paul used some tricks that come from the very fundamentals of puppetry itself.
Yeah, it was going back to the fundamentals of puppetry. It was rod puppetry. And what I'm looking down at is a monitor. So I'm actually watching a monitor about this size, exactly what both A and B camera are seeing, because it's really important as well. It's not just the performance, but it's how she looks on screen. So I not only had to think about her movements, but I also had to be super aware of how she looked. There's something that we do with hand puppets, with hand and rod puppets, the Muppets, is that you never ever see them in profile if you can help it. You always keep them in 3/4 view so that you can see both eyes. And I applied that a lot to M3GAN, making sure that unless the shot was deliberately of her in profile, I never ever turned her head so that you lost one of the eyes. And also the head was angled. If she turned, I didn't turn her like this. I turned her like this, so that there was a slight angle to her head. It's visually more interesting.
Keeping M3GAN's eyes wet was also a big pain on set. Between shots, M3GAN needed to receive her eye drops in order for the eyes to get lubricated, otherwise her eyelids would get stuck during a blink, completely ruining a scene. But what about the scenes that didn't use a doll? This is where Amy Donald comes in, the young actress who Paul has worked with on Sweet Tooth before. She was able to imitate robotic movements, flex her dance moves on screen, and act out scenes which would be much more difficult to animate if puppeteers did it instead.
She never wore an animatronic mask. Her face was digitally replaced with a digital version of the puppet's face. So they did have eyes originally that she could see through in the mask, and then they quickly realized that, or she found that, one, because it's silicone, she heated up quite a bit inside the mask, and two, her vision was compromised, and because of all the stunt work, she needed to have very clear vision. So they ended up actually just cutting the eyes out. So that actually looked terrifying when Amy walked around in the silicone mask. But no, there was no expression in that mask. It was all replaced with a CGI face later on. I've seen this a little bit in the discourse online under some of the videos on YouTube. Oh, what's so great about a child who can dance and act? And it's like, yeah, but an 11-year-old child who can dance, act, and do their own stunts, they're really rare. And Amy is such a professional on set, and no matter what she went through and no matter how long her day, she always was smiling and always chatty and joking. She's a great, great kid, and I believe she's got a big future ahead of her. And because she's a champion dancer, they knew that she could do that hands-free cartwheel, and so her dance teacher choreographed that sequence, and so she was already comfortable with the choreographer. And yeah, that was an awesome day. I was like getting to watch Amy do that and do that flawlessly, take after take after take. I think she did it like 4 or 5 times and never missed a beat. Never missed a beat. She absolutely nailed it.
So really, if you want convincing results for your uncanny character, the practical only seldom manages to disappoint, and in this case, it even elevated the VFX that appeared in the film. But what about a production that used virtual backgrounds for almost every single shot in the series? Well, I think you'll want to take a look at this video we did on the crazy dark bay wall created for the series 1899 and how they used it to film this fascinating show.